Hi there, Youngman Brown here. I just want to let you know that today's episode is the first half of my conversation with Jon Contino. It was a great conversation that kind of seemed to keep going and going and going, and before we knew it, we had an hour-long conversation for my half-hour-long podcast. So that being said, it is split into two, and I just wanted to let you know that it does leave off on a bit of a cliffhanger, so don't be mad. I gave you fair warning. And if you are mad, that means that you're having fun. So you will have another half of a great conversation tomorrow. So that being said, I will get out of the way and get right to the interview. Thanks for listening. Your Creative Push, episode 31.
I think that as a creative person, if there is a finish, I think you're done being a creative person.
Welcome to Your Creative Push. This is the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Jon Contino. Jon is an artist and graphic designer from New York, which he is justifiably very, very proud of. And his designs, typography, and illustrations have graced magazine covers, t-shirts, album jackets, murals, food trucks, movie posters, websites, and national ad campaigns, just to name a few. He is the founder and creative director of Contino Brand Menswear and the co-founder and creative director of CXXVI Clothing Company. Now, Jon, I found you the way I guess most people find all good things with the Sports Illustrated Swimsuit Edition. So that's how I found you. And when I went to your website, I was amazed with all the stuff that I had already seen of yours. Let me look here. You've done things for, I'm just going to list it because I know you've heard it all, but it's kind of like a brag for me to have you on the show.
It's cool, man. I'll take
done
it.
You've done stuff for Nike, Miller High Life, Jameson, ESPN, Diet Coke, IBM, American Eagle, the show Boardwalk Empire, Stephen King, Brooklyn Nets, Jack Daniels, Louis. I've sat and watched an episode of Louis while drinking a Jack and Coke, while wearing my American Eagle pajamas. So your hands are everywhere, dude. You're everywhere. How do you do it?
I don't sleep, man. There's no sleep. I don't sleep. You know what it is? I just I love what I do, and I've always wanted to do this. And the fact that I get to do it it's just a lot of times people will say be careful what you wish for kind of thing. You just might get it. But I wish for it, man. I love it. I love what I do, man. I can't get enough of it. If I had a different job, I would still do this every day. I just really enjoy it. And the fact that I've been doing it for so long, and now I got more ability to almost, push people around and be more of a director as opposed to just a low-level designer and just be like, listen, this is how it has to be done. This is how it has to be done. More of, I got almost 20 years of experience under my belt at this point. So I have a little bit more weight behind my opinions, and the fact that I get to do that makes it a lot easier for me to do stuff that I enjoy doing and cooler stuff just in general. So I have, I got nothing to complain about. I get to do all cool stuff all the time.
That's awesome, and it's definitely nice to be in that kind of a position where you not to boss people around, but
right. Well, not to boss people around, but to actually just one thing that was always a thing, especially as a younger designer, is that people don't value your opinion. They look at you more as a machine than anything else. So when you get to that point where you're able to sit down with an art director, a creative director, or a client, or whoever it is, and just be like, no, I'm telling you right now, this is going to be better for your brand, blah, 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 and then see results, people will appreciate that a lot more. So you're not really bossing people around, but you're definitely you're putting more of your weight into it, and people will accept it more than they used to. It
makes a lot of sense. When do you think you got that that kind of a confidence, where you're sure that you know what's best? There was
a time when I was younger, because I started doing this in my early teens, because I kind of started doing it around the .com boom, because it was a free for all. It was like the Wild West, So it was, if I learned how to make a website, I was getting website jobs, So there was all these kinds of things. So I had varying stages of confidence that came with that. And then as I moved to the next phase of this type of career, the confidence got shot down again, and then I had to build it back up to the next level. But there was a point in time where I used to run a studio back in 2005 that ran until 2009, the beginning of 2010. And I got a job with an agency in Europe, Ogilvy Paris, to develop this, campaign for a new soft drink that Coca-Cola was putting out. And at that point, it was the biggest job I'd ever worked on. And I was on the phone with the art director, the client, the monotype who was developing the fonts that I was designing for it, like all these heavy hitters and stuff. And it came to a point where they asked my opinion, and I kind of told them, and they were like, well, we trust you. You're the expert. And I was just like, wow, no one's ever said that to me, and if that's like a good place to start, to have them be the first to tell me that I was an expert in something. So that definitely gave me a huge boost in confidence. And then from there, I definitely had my highs and lows, but just hearing that from a legitimate source, as opposed to like, not for nothing, I love my mom, but my mom telling me the best isn't going to get me anywhere. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Like to hear from people who are going to be paying me, or people who are actually going to be visible to, the world, it's, it was definitely a huge boost. And then from there, it's every time one of those types of jobs came up and I got a compliment, or I got a word, nice word of mouth or something like that, it's a little by little, the confidence goes up and up and up. And by the time you get to a certain point, you're not really worried what people say anymore. And it's just kind of like, if you like it, great. If you don't like it, that's okay too, and, we're all trying to, make something that's cool and that's going to work for us in terms of business and all that. And, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I take no offense to it, but I'm going to give you my suggestion. I have a track record to prove it. So, take from it what you will. So that's where the confidence, I think, comes from at this point.
What would you suggest to like somebody just starting out that isn't at that point yet? Because you know how like any kind of negative criticism, especially when you're starting out, can like just destroy any kind of productivity or any going forward with it. What would you suggest to somebody who isn't at that point yet?
Well, it's a tough business, man. It's a really, really competitive business. And anytime you are putting yourself out on the line like that, I think more than not, you need to expect that people are going to tell you it sucks or it's stupid or they don't get it or something like that, just because it's a very subjective medium. Like you're doing creative stuff that you're just thinking up out of the blue in your head. So just from that aspect alone, people can just be not on your wavelength, not understanding where you're coming from. Either you're too far ahead or you're too far behind or something. So it's just like you kind of have to go in thinking that it's going to be an uphill battle no matter what, and that you need to expect losses more than successes. And I think once you go into that with like the I got nothing to lose type of attitude and the willingness to learn and respect other people's opinions, I think all that stuff will come a lot easier than if you're just like, I need to be great, I need to be good at what I do, and it's just like I need people to like me. Like you just can't do it like that. You just need to understand that people are just not going to respond to you that way until you get into your own groove or your own niche or whatever it is.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Coming up, what was one of your worst moments? You mentioned that you've had highs and lows. What was one of your lowest?
Well, if
you don't mind going there.
Yeah, no. When I was when I was running my studio in the mid 2000s, a friend of mine, Matt Gordon, he came on as partner in the studio, and we were doing really well together. We were building the business. We weren't working crazy hours. We were kind of doing like a 9 to 6 type of time. And it was, very normal. We were comfortable. We had a good amount of local clients. I mean, between the 5 boroughs of New York and like Long Island and Jersey and Connecticut and stuff, we were doing pretty good, regional type of stuff. Nothing huge. But definitely some cool stuff here and there and a lot of not so cool stuff, But, we did have, 2 retainers going, which was nice because we would constantly have this source of income and we could try and focus on doing other cool stuff and all that. But when the recession hit, those 2 companies, they closed. And that immediately sent us into, well, we're going to be making like $1,000 a month between the two of us. It's not going to get us anywhere, So that was a huge, huge shocker for us, and kind of, I think it made us question what we were doing. Almost like, if we can't, now that these two are gone, like, were those just gifts, and they were taken away and now we got nothing? I mean, I wouldn't call it, it was definitely a low, and it definitely sucked. And it lasted for, man, like 2 years of nothing, and it was just like, just barely, just finding ways to pay the rent, finding ways to just like survive and just try to make something of it. And so many times where I was just like, maybe I should just do this on the side and get another more secure type of position or something like that. But, I didn't give up, and we ended up trying to find a way into making things work. We ended up starting that clothing company, CXXVI, and that ended up picking us out of the ditch. I like to think that the lowest of the lows are the best lessons that you can learn too, because if I didn't go through that, I would have never learned what it was like to lose business in such a big, disastrous kind of way, and I would have never learned how to get out of it. So, that's why it's always tough too. When people ask advice, it's like, well, what would you suggest for this? What would you suggest for that? It's like, you need to just experience the world shitting on you in order to understand how to avoid it, and I think that's something that's so valuable to just learn, and so priceless to just experience that, it sucks and it's going to suck, but if it doesn't break you, it's only going to make you stronger. And thankfully it did. Otherwise, who knows what I'd be doing right now.
Yeah, hindsight is always
the
easiest way to look at those kinds of things, not when you're going through it or before it. What was one of your best moments?
I don't know. That's a really
Playboy interview.
The Playboy interview. That was pretty cool. That was definitely cool. I mean, there's been a lot of cool stuff that's happened, and the people around me get excited about it, but I don't really get too excited about that kind of stuff, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that just like the lowest of the lows, the highest of the highs are very fleeting. And you get hit, and you have like a high for like a day or two, and then it's gone, and then nobody cares anymore, and everyone forgets, and everyone's back to their own life, and it's like, oh, cool, you got interviewed by Playboy, that's really awesome. Well, here's like a picture of like a dog doing a backflip or something on Facebook, because no one cares anymore, like,
thumbs up,
it's just like one of those things where you're just like, oh man, this is it, I've made it. And it's like, what does making it mean? Like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, no one's gonna like drive to your house with like a key to Fort Knox, and you're just like, you can take whatever you want out of this. Like, you didn't do anything, like it's cool to have these successes and stuff, but when it comes down to it, it doesn't really mean anything for tomorrow unless you can make it mean something for tomorrow. So it's almost like life is giving you these tools to help grow whatever it is that you're doing. So it's like, okay, here's an interview with Playboy. It's awesome. Everyone's like psyched, and people are like texting you like, oh, it's so cool, whatever. And it's like, yeah, cool. All right, whatever. What am I doing tomorrow? Like, what am I working on? That interview is not going to pay my bills. It's not going to like buy clothes for my daughter. Like it's like you have to take that and just put it to good use. So I wouldn't look at those things as more like the highs. I would just look at them as like tools in the toolbox kind of thing. The highs for me, I think is more of like an overall thing. Like, I get to work for myself. I get to work from a home studio where I can see my family whenever I want. I think that's kind of cooler. I could take off when I want. Not that I do, but I could. I have that ability without like someone like, breathing down my neck or giving me shit about it. So I think that's the best thing I could say I have.
Yeah, I think that's like almost a curse of creative types too, is like you can't, like there is no finish line. There's no winning the game,
No way.
It's you always like in the back of your mind know that, all right, there's something else brewing here. There's something else that I got to do. And there's no like finish.
I think that as a creative person too, like if there is a finish, I think you're done being a creative person. Like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's none of that. It's a constant discovery, you know, like feeling your way around in the dark, just trying to figure out where you want to be. I mean, if you look at every famous and non-famous artistic person in the history of the world, I mean, all you're seeing is evolution of their style and changing from one thing to another thing and making weird choices. I mean, like look at Picasso. If you ever look at Picasso's early work, the guy was he was, you know, brilliant at making this beautifully, you know, lifelike type of compositions. And then you see the way he evolved, and it's just like this bizarre, you know, surrealistic geometry. And you're just like, how do you get here? You know, but as a creative person, you either get sick of what you're doing, or you feel like you've done it as well as you can do it, or you feel like there's more out there for you. And there's a constant push to try and figure out what's next, you know, just because that's what our brains do as creative people. You just want more. And it's kind of an addiction, but it's, you know, at least it's relatively healthy.
Yeah. It's a healthy compulsion. Going along with that, do you think that your design kind of defines you as a person too, or vice versa?
Yeah, I think the design or the style that I do comes from my personality. I think it's, a lot of what I do and a lot of the way I do it is because of the fact that the things that I thought I wanted to do, I wasn't able to do. So, I mean, if I wanted to make super clean, tight, you know, font designs and stuff like that, which I wanted to do for years, and I worked on it for years, I couldn't do it because that's just not who I am, you know? So as soon as I kind of let go of all my preconceived notions of like what a good designer should be, and I just kind of embraced what I had the ability to do and what I had the skills to do, then all of a sudden things became a lot easier for me. So as soon as I was just like, well, I can't do this with, you know, Illustrator and like these super clean vector points and all this type of stuff. If I can just sit here and draw it and scan it and just make the composition look good, we'll see how it looks. And it ended up working out for me because it was just me being me. And I think that's what a lot of people are scared to do. And, you know, I think I got forced into figuring that out for myself because of some of the business things that maybe took a wrong turn for me. So I had to kind of keep redefining who I was or keep figuring out who I was. But it helped. And I think as soon as you're able to just kind of let go of all that stuff and be yourself, a whole new world opens up for you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to kind of go into more detail about your hands-on approach, because I know, could you like define that a little bit more for the audience about like what you mean by that, as far as instead of using Illustrator, I know you like to draw by hand, and can you explain it, like how that differs from everyone else? Because you're a graphic designer, but you're also an artist too.
Yeah, I think that it's you know, I grew up right outside of Manhattan. So the amount of cool design, modern design, classic design, whatever, was always constantly around me. You know, like when you're 25 miles away or whatever it was, I mean, you know, you're constantly seeing, you know, beautifully constructed works of art, whether it's architecture, advertising, you know, whatever. You know, it's always around you. And I feel like I always had a real, you know, love for that stuff whenever I would see it. So I kind of grew up like really like loving all different types of design, but becoming, you know, almost like a self-taught expert in the history of design. So I loved the minimalism of, you know, Swiss design, and I loved all that kind of stuff. And it was more about understanding and learning composition and hierarchy and negative space and all that type of stuff. I just really loved that. So I felt like I was always just someone who was naturally a good designer, but not naturally a good illustrator or anything else. Like I knew how to put things on a page to make it look good, but besides that, you know, I didn't think I was really that good at anything else. But I always wanted to be an illustrator. So I worked on it. I drew all the time. I tried to figure out what was me. And then, you know, like it was one of those things. It just clicked where it's just like, well, I know it looks good. I know this minimalism thing that I really like. I know this like kind of modern thing that I kind of like. What if I just start drawing it instead of laying it out with type and lines and shapes? Like, what if I just hand draw this kind of thing? And using that in combination, it almost like created this new style that I didn't really know existed. And then, of course, as I, kept doing it, I started to find out that a lot of that stuff did kind of exist, but like 100 years ago. So I kind of found more of like what I loved just from, learning and learning and learning. Yeah, I mean, everything I do is I just draw it all. I just draw every single thing, from the smallest clothing company to the biggest international conglomerate. It's all hand-drawn stuff. And then I just use the computer to clean it up, add some color, whatever, lay it out into files that need to be used for printing or distribution or whatever it is. But it's all hand-drawn, pencil and micron pens, and that's it. That's all it is.
And if you guys want to see a great video, I'll link it up in the show notes, yourcreativepush.com/Jon Contino. I watched, it's about a 16-minute video, and you go through the process of creating a logo, and it was on a bandana. And during that process, you talk about the development stage where you kind of pick from the DNA of other things. And I think that's really interesting. Because like as a writer, I feel like you read and you kind of, sometimes you get jealous when you read something amazing. You're like, shit, like I should have thought of this, and now I could never write about it or whatever. But I think all those things kind of like stew in your brain and like kind of add up to what defines you as a writer. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the pulling from the DNA of other people and the difference between, because I think a lot of people are afraid to do that because they feel like it's like stealing almost, not stealing, but like it's not genuine.
Right.
I don't know. Sorry, I read.
Yeah, no. I think that's a valid point. There's a difference though, I think, between borrowing from like the DNA of something and literally taking something from someone else. So it's like every band in the entire world does it. It's a matter of your influence, like what you grow up with or what you develop with, like if you listen to a band and you read an interview and it's like, well, the people will say like, who are your influences and stuff? And they'll be like, oh, this band, this band, this band, this band. And then, maybe you haven't heard of them because, that world hasn't been, open to you yet. You're going to go back and you're going to listen to them, and 9 times out of 10, none of those bands are going to sound like the band that you like, and you're going to be like, oh, this sucks. Like I thought this was going to be like, more like the band that I like. But
right.
It's not really about that. It's like you're taking, like if you're in a band and they're like, well, who are your influences? You go, well, I like this band. Why do you like that band? I like that band because it has like the sickest drum sound. Like I love how big the drums sound. Or it's like, I like this singer because of the way that he phrases his words or blends them into the rhythms of the songs. It's not necessarily like, I like this band because of how this part goes, and I'm just going to take this part and put it in my song. It's more about like how something is done or the reason behind why something is done. So you're just like kind of taking inspiration from the intangible parts of things. So like if I were to say that, like I love, modern style Swiss design, and you look at my work, it's almost just like, well, I don't see Helvetica anywhere,
Yeah.
like nothing that you do looks like a Subway poster or something like that, So, but it's like, it's the thought behind it. It's the way that it's kind of crafted and composed that I find so inspiring that I'll take and put into my work. But, you have to take that and filter it through your brain and all your life experiences and see how it comes out. I think when you're younger, it's a lot easier to just take those things and be like, well, I like this and I like this and I like this, and just smash them together and make like a Frankenstein.
Buffet style.
But I think as you keep working and you keep figuring out what it is that is so appealing to you about these things, you start to dig deeper and you start learning a little bit more about why those people did the things that they did. And that becomes your greater influence as opposed to just like the vain kind of top level part of it.
I agree that it's important to kind of take from not take from other artists, but you allow other artists to be inspiration to you. I think that people, like a lot of the people listening, are people who haven't quite started their creative journey, and maybe they see somebody that they love, like they see your branding, your graphic design. They say, I will never get to that level. I think it's a scary thing to compare yourself to other people. So can you talk a little bit about that, like how to get through that?
Yeah, I think one thing that you have to realize is that you never are going to get to that level, because everyone's different. All the levels are different. It's not like Super Mario Brothers get from 1 to 9 and then you're done. It's a very organic, like cosmic type of thing. There is no level. You just go in different directions and do your own thing and make what you can out of it. So it's like, I remember even when I was in college, I still was trying to figure out where I was. I mean, in general, if you look at my work from age 2 to age 32, everything looks exactly the same to me. I mean, it looks like it all comes from the same person with the same, type of feeling behind it. Obviously it gets better, but it looks like it's still kind of coming from the same factory of production. It's just like churning out stuff that's just getting refined as it comes out. But like in college, I was obsessed with the work of Derek Hess, and he's this illustrator he still does. But he had like these crazy illustrations of like almost like contorted human forms. And the way that he did it with like a minimal color palette and everything, I took figure drawing like 1,000 times in college just because I just wanted to learn how to get that down. So between him and like someone like Da Vinci or Michelangelo or whatever, Egon Schiele, these types of guys, I would want to be a great figure drawing type of guy. I want to be a great figure artist. And I would just try to copy it, just get the feel of how it felt to draw that way, and then try to put that into my own. And I'm like forcing something that wasn't me. Like you think about it, and I would always think about the fact that me forcing it that much wasn't going to make me that person. It was just like, I could force it as much as I want, but it's never going to look like that because I'm never going to be him. Or, it's just physically impossible. It's just an impossibility. So, as soon as I was able to let go of that, then I was just like, all right, well, I can at least learn from this. I can learn what it's like to draw the type of contoured lines that he does, or use this minimal color palette that he does that I like so much. And just, as soon as you can kind of, like, again, it's a lot about letting go and just letting yourself come out just very naturally. And I think that's a huge part of this just whole creative process that we've been discussing. It's just, you can compare yourself to someone else and just be like, I would love to reach that level from a general standpoint in terms of how much they work, the type of stuff they get to work on, the places they get to work, whatever. I mean, you can do that, but in terms of the actual things I think that matter for all of us, like when we're, rotting in the grounds 100 years from now, 200 years from now, like this stuff that people can look back on. Like no one's going to look back on it and be like, he was working in this place, or she was working with this person. It's more about like, what did they make? Like what is this, like this visual legacy that comes along with the things that they were trying to do. And those other things definitely get discussed, but I think it's like important to just kind of focus on this type of creative being that you have inside of you, and just trying to, let it flourish a little bit for what it is, and just let it become its own thing, as opposed to trying to fit it into the mold of someone else's success or failures or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's important to do it for yourself too, not just like what will other people remember me by. I think it's important to get it out and just look at it, and especially if you haven't done anything yet creatively, to just have something to start with and be like, oh, boom, I created that, right. Put in the portfolio.
Well, I think the whole thing is like, if you're a creative person, you want to do it for a living, the whole reason you're doing it is to satisfy this creative need that you have inside of you. So it's like, if you're doing it for someone else, or you're doing it to be someone else, you're not really satisfying anything. I mean, that's another thing that I found too, is when I try to emulate the people whose work I loved, I didn't get any satisfaction of it. All I got was frustration. The second I started to actually try to do what I felt was me, then I was just like, I couldn't get enough. Then I was like, let me do more and more and more. Let me get better and better and better. And that's where like the passion really comes out. And it's like, like your desires to be creative and unique and interesting start to really grow from.
Yeah, and it almost feels like it's all been pent up inside of you,
right.
And then once you actually get that true shit out, like the true, like your true calling, your true being, like honesty.
Right.
Once you get that out of you, it's like a relief almost.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it's you're right when you're saying it's like it's all pent up and stuff. It's like that's what happens. There's times where, and I'm sure so many people can relate to this. In the middle of the night, you have an idea. The only way that you can go back to sleep is if you get up and you execute that idea and get it out of your head some way, shape, or form. Is you got to get it on paper or on tape or whatever it is that you do. I mean, you got to get it out there and you just got to get it done so that you can so you can relax. It's like, it's tormenting in a way, but it's a good type of torment.
That literally happened to me last night. I was laying in bed and I got this random idea for a blog post, and I was like, "Ah, shit!" Like my phone was off. Like,
get up.
Yeah, I was up. Just gotta write it down, and that's so annoying too.
Yeah.
I feel like once you go down that road, once you do start creating, you also know the pain of if you do fall asleep and you miss that amazing idea. You can remember the next day. You're like, "Oh man, I remember I had this awesome idea that I was like all pumped up about," and then. But what was it? It's almost like how you can't remember a dream. You're like, and it's just lost, and you know that you lost it forever.
There's a great scene in the show Mad Men when that happens, and one of the characters is like up all night working on this thing, and he has this conversation with the janitor, and he's like, "That's it, I got it." And he just like leaves the janitor alone at like 3:00 in the morning while he's cleaning the building. He's like, "I can sleep finally." Wakes up the next day like in his office, and he's like, "I had the best idea and it's gone. I didn't write it down. I thought I wrote it down. I didn't write it down." And he's just like so distraught and just so beaten down. And it's just like, oh God, I know that feeling so well.
For sure. And some other times too, it's a terrible idea. And you're like, the next morning you're like, what was I thinking? Why did I get up from this?
It's true.
It's funny.
It goes both ways.
Shifting gears a little bit, can you tell me about the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue?
Dude, I mean, what a great project.
Oh no, that's where I'm going to end our first half of the interview. You're going to have to come back tomorrow to get the answer to that question. It just kind of, I'm sorry about that. It just kind of came, like that question fell right in the middle of our hour-long conversation. So I apologize. Tomorrow you will get that answer first thing, I promise, and we actually talk a lot about that because I think it's a very cool thing, like all, joking aside about, what it is, it's a staple of Americana, so really cool conversation so far with Jon. When I went downstairs after recording the conversation, because I record upstairs, my wife asked me if I was if I had just conducted an interview with a comedian because I was laughing so much, but I feel like we really connected. It was a really good conversation, and I had so much fun during the conversation, and it gets even more fun in the second half. So make sure you tune in tomorrow, and hopefully this provided you enough of a push to get some work done today. So go do some work and come back tomorrow. We will be here to give you even more inspiration for tomorrow. So thanks for listening, and thanks for subscribing. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.